the former UK immigration minister, and he also used to be leader of the Conservatives in the European Parliament. I started by asking Lord Kirkhope about his reaction to the numbers published by The Guardian.
Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, really? This is just a matter of fact. When we were in the European Union, we had free movement of labour across Europe, including this country. And in that time, a great number of people came to Britain to work here, particularly in the health service and in other areas where we needed workers. And those numbers built up. And, of course, once we left the European Union, there was no longer potentially that free movement, and therefore, in terms of immigration rules and the like, it became more complicated, and many of those people left. They went back to European countries. So it's pretty obvious that would happen. We knew that would happen, and it has happened. And I think that the alternative approach now, which is to minimize the immigration potential for people from the European Union, but to maximize the potential for immigration from the Third World, does seem to me to be quite a hazardous and risky policy.
Why do you think it's hazardous and risky from what you call the Third World?
Yeah, well, two reasons mainly. One is that qualifications, for instance, were being fully recognized across the EU for people in particular occupations, such as doctors, nurses, and the like. And we could trust and rely entirely, without further investigation, on those qualifications. Now we have a situation where we have to, at the very least, look carefully at the nature of the qualifications and the abilities of people who want to come here from other parts of the world. It's not quite so easy. We don't have such an easy arrangement or knowledge. And I think the other thing we have to bear in mind is that we have to make sure that whoever comes to this country, and when I was immigration minister, tried to make this happen, that we have good community relations and good race relations. And it seems to me that if our emphasis now is going to be to encourage larger numbers of people to come here from the Third World, we have to be sure that we can assimilate those people and that we do make sure that the community relations that come with them are going to work. And I think that is something which perhaps ministers haven't thought about sufficiently, and which is a major aspect of immigration law.
Well, they're coming from countries that used to be part of the British Empire, whose education systems were introduced by the British, and who've got very, very strong links with the UK, far stronger than many of those countries in the European Union, Lord Kirkhope.
Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think you have to have a certain level of equality in terms of people who wish to come to this country. Apart from the fact that the qualifications are very important for particular roles that we need people to perform, we have to consider the way that the law lies at the moment. I mean, historically, there was always a preference, or the preferential treatment was given not only to the EU because there was freedom of movement, but also to the Commonwealth. And indeed, the law was only tightened up, particularly in 2014, about the right of entry of citizens of the Commonwealth. And there still is a residual situation where preferences can be tightened up, particularly not only to the EU because there was freedom of movement, but also to the Commonwealth. And indeed, the law was only tightened up, particularly in 2014, about the right of entry of citizens of the Commonwealth. And there still is a residual situation where preferences can be to them rather than to members of the European Union. And that, I think, is wrong, because not only have we lost a large number of people, and I by the way, I disagree completely with the suggestion that the European Union were providing primarily in certain sectors, but not, for instance, in the health service. You only have to ask someone who's involved in the health service, as I do. They will tell you that large numbers of nurses and other people, important and vital staff in that particular area, did leave because they were European Union citizens following the ending of free movement. So if we're going to have an immigration policy, it's entirely up to the government to decide on preferences, where people come from, how many we have, and for what purpose. It's completely open to them to decide that. But as far as I am concerned, I think it would be a big mistake to actually be prejudiced against, the current situation suggests it, prejudiced against members of the European Union or citizens from the European Union.
Yep. And Lord Kirkhope, in the end, people going into the health service, whether they are going to work or to receive treatment, they will know that it is the most diverse workforce of any institution in this country and has been so for the past 50 or so years.
Well, I'm not denying that, but all I'm saying
particularly
is
from the Commonwealth.
All I'm saying is that the balance in terms of who is working in the health service and indeed in a number of other areas is undoubtedly changed post-Brexit. It must have done, and I think we now need to consider carefully what our immigration rules are going to be for the future. And I think it's quite... The point about asylum is a second matter. It's a different matter altogether. And that is, again, a matter where I think the government certainly have to take a pretty tough line, and I think we have to be sure that people are only admitted or only given refugee status if they meet the criteria of the 1951 UN Convention, which when I was minister I was quite clear about. But those people that do comply with those requirements should be given asylum, and that has been a tradition which we have. And the numbers, as you rightly say, are, despite the fact that people are arriving in ways which we would not desire, the numbers are nothing compared with the immigration routes and immigration rules, and that is something where the government has absolute control, and it needs to exercise that control in the right way.